Questions for American presidential candidates. This is Ronald Stein. Ronald Stein is columnist, author, and energy advisor. He is the founder of the company called PTS. Welcome to the podcast, Ronald Stein.
Yeah, Armando, glad to be aboard.
Thank you. And this is me. Let me remove this to introduce a little bit our topic today. So at the end of this year, the U.S. Will have presidential elections, Ronald, and you prepared some questions that you would love to to give to the candidates to discussion, and I have each question in one slide. So if you wanted to start talking for each one, it's great. The first is related to lifestyles before 1800 century.
Exactly, yes. Because the elephant in the room that no one wants to discuss is that we've become a very materialistic society over the last 200 years. And the world is populated from 1 to 8 billion people because of the more than 6,000 useful products and different fuels for planes, ships, trucks, cars, and the militaries and the space program, all made from crude oil that did not exist before the 1800s. And we also know that wind turbines and solar panels only generate electricity, but are incapable of manufacturing any products or fuels. So, yeah, the question is, I'd like to know their plan of how we're going to, get to this, net zero emission society that we had before the 1800s. It was, life was hard back then, and people never lived beyond 40 years of age. And so I'm not sure I want to go back to net zero. And, I'd like to say, the question is, since hospitals, airports, communication systems, militaries, planes, trains, they're all based on the products made from fossil fuels. So what's the plan to transition to lifestyles that existed before the 1800s?
Before, yeah. And how do you expect that Democrats would respond or Republicans would respond? Is the same answer from both?
No, I think the Democrats will probably, well, if they have the questions in advance, hopefully they'll give intelligent responses. But if they don't get the questions in advance, Joe Biden is going to probably stick to a zero emission society. And I think Trump will probably say that's a bunch of BS and say we need our materialistic society. The climate is changing. There's no doubt about that. And, you got to take a look at, there are a lot of fatalities that will occur from climate changes, but there's a lot more that will occur if you eliminate all the products. If you eliminate the hospitals and the airports and, all the transportation system, all the food that we grow today that we didn't grow, 200 years ago. So, yeah, there's no perfect scenario, but I think, the materialistic society we have the ability to keep more people alive. If they get sick, we can cure them. Without the products, if they get sick, we can't cure them. There was no hospitals 200 years ago, and so we have to basically face reality and talk about it.
Very good point. This trade-off, Ronald, considering one side the climate problems that we are challenging, and the other side all the products that we need, and it's impossible to survive without them now. So,
well, exactly, because there's 8 billion people on the planet, and all this zero emission activity is from the wealthy countries, which represent less than 1 billion of the 8 billion. So, we're doing a lot of things that we can afford. We can afford to do anything, the wealthy countries. But the developing countries, they don't have the hospitals we have. They don't have the airports and the transportation systems that we have. And it's really tough. So you really have to look at, what's best for the 8 billion people on the earth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Let's see the second question you prepared. Plan to support a supply chain Related to products and fuels demanded.
Well, exactly. You know, as we transition to a cleaner electricity, there's a lost reality that the primary usage of that black, cruddy looking crude oil is not for the generation of electricity. It's primarily manufacturing oil derivatives and fuels, which are the ingredients of every product we have and the economies and lifestyles that existed that didn't exist 200 years ago. You know, today if you eradicate the world of crude oil usage, we'd ground 20,000 commercial planes, we'd ground 50,000 military aircraft, and we got like 50,000 merchant ships, you know, moving products all over the world. They would have no fuel to move. And so, yeah, we really have to, come up with a replacement to support the supply chain of products to support the materialistic society. And, the question is, knowing that all electricity came after the discovery of oil and that there's a vast distinction between electricity and products, I would like to know how the presidential candidates plan to support the supply chain of products and fuels demanded by a materialistic society and economy as America reduces its dependency on crude oil. What's the backup plan? How do there's going to be a lot of shortages if we don't.
Mm-hmm. And do you believe that both will respond in the same way, or Democrats more, let's see, not aware about dependency of crude oil?
Well, I would expect a better answer from the Republicans. The Democrats, like I say, they're so tied up in zero emissions at any cost. I don't know. I mean, like I say, I'm amazed at some of the things that come out of Joe Biden's mouth. So nothing will surprise me.
Yeah, good. Let's go to the third point. America continues. Subsidies is a very big problem, and financial supports to environmental degradation. That's a very complicated question for them.
Yes, because I wrote the book Clean Energy Exploitations to bring transparency to the fact all the exotic minerals and metals to go green, to build the EV batteries, the wind turbines, the solar panels. They're coming from developing countries that have no labor laws, no environmental laws, and we're exploiting people that have yellow, brown, and black skin. And a lot of this stuff, most of the stuff is coming from China and Africa, and like I say, it's causing environmental degradation on their land and exploiting people that have yellow, brown, and black skin. I think it's unethical and immoral, and yet, our government programs are providing incentives and subsidies to buy EVs and subsidizing wind turbines, subsidizing solar panels, and to me, it's providing financial encouragement to China and Africa. Continue exploiting your people that have yellow, brown, and black skin. Continue the environmental degradation on your land. We're going green. And so, the question really for the presidential candidates is, do they really believe it's ethical and moral for America to continue subsidizing this green movement? Is, like I say, because it provides financial encouragement to China and Africa to continue what they're doing. And, just to support clean EV batteries and wind turbines and solar panels in America's backyard, that it's unethical and moral. And like I say, I think it's hypocritical that we have this double standard going on, that we're going green at the expense of other countries.
Which party, let's see, like more subsidies and this kind of approach?
Well, it's interesting because Joe Biden, I think it was a couple of years ago, mentioned that batteries may be tainted with child labor. And then the next thing he does, he's encouraging subsidies to buy EVs. and
indirect way.
Yeah, he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. He agrees with the problem, then he financially supports the problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's a contradiction.
Yes.
No doubt. Very good point. This one, Ronald. You should run to presidency. The fourth question you have, because the intermittency is more related to interruptible supply of electricity. Why, Ronald? Which question is
Well,
this?
the current generating systems we have coal, natural gas, hydro, nuclear. All four of those provide continuous, uninterruptible electricity. And today we got computers and data centers and the military and iPhones. I mean, everything that needs continuous electricity. You get a blip, and your computer has to reboot, or your iPhone has to reboot, and if you're in the operating table, you don't want the lights to go out, and so it's amazing that we're putting everything into wind and solar, which we know they cannot generate uninterruptible electricity unless they have backup from the other four systems. And so it's kind of like a redundant supply of electricity because if you have a nameplate rating of a coal-fired power plant or natural gas or hydro or nuclear, you pretty much get 95% of that annually. It's operating all the time. Maybe it's down for maintenance, for some time, but you're going to get 95% of that rating on an annual basis. But wind and solar don't work most of the time because wind's blowing and the sun's shining, but not all the time. And so consequently, you have intermittent electricity. And the nameplate rating is basically a farce because you're not going to get 95% of that on an annual basis.
Mhm.
And so it's, like I say, we need continuous uninterruptible electricity. And the question is, when the government is continuing to shut our coal-fired power plants and natural gas power plants, and in the United States is shuttering nuclear, how do you plan to support the need for continuous electricity to support hospitals and airports and the military and data centers? That is going to be a interesting question because, like I say, it's a redundant system that doesn't work most of the time.
Mhm. Mhm. And Ronald, more renewables we use, more reliable backup energy we need. Is it correct?
Well, yeah, it needs a lot of backup because when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining, where do you get the power? Well, you're getting the power from the power generating systems that you're shutting down. Well, if you shut them down, there won't be anything in the tank to pull from.
And the total cost may be bigger than only direct
Well,
power.
yeah, it's a redundant cost because why do you want to spend all that money, digging up materials around the world and shipping it all over the world, and to have it work half the time? It doesn't make sense.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, good point. And you see Democrats and Republicans saying the same answer or different answers?
I would expect um, the Republicans probably to address the moral issue stronger than the Democrats, because, like I say, the Democrats they're encouraging all these subsidies and incentives to continue doing this. So, you either got if you continue the subsidies and incentives, you're supporting the situation. So
Uh-huh.
we'll see.
It's it seems to me that Democrats hate oil sector and Republicans are more, let's see, acceptable with them. Is
Well,
it correct?
I don't mind the Democrats hating oil. I just would like to know what's the backup plan because I'm not pro oil. I'm pro the products we get from oil, and that's my concern. We have a materialistic society, and the hospital needs a lot of these products, and the airports, and everybody. And how do you keep that product supply chain going without oil? If we've had 200 years to replace oil, and been unable to do it. And, oil does have its limitations. The world's been around, billions of years. And yeah, we might have, a couple hundred years left. And with new technology, we might be able to find an extra couple hundred years. But, hey, maybe 500 years from now, well, that's a small blip for for 4 billion-year-old planet. And to go after more and more oil and to dig for more and more, lithium and cobalt, it's only the wealthy countries who can do that. And again, we're talking about, maybe 1 billion of the 8 billion on the planet. What are the other 7 billion people doing? I mean, if we could get the products we have in their hands, there wouldn't be as many fatalities on their end, from weather-related activities and diseases. But yeah, it's a two-sided approach. You got the wealthy countries want to do something, and with technology, we'll probably be able to find hundreds more years of oil and coal and et cetera, but it'll get more expensive. And if it gets more expensive, it's only going to be available to the wealthy that can afford to go after it, which is the wealthy countries.
Yeah. Good point. Let's see the question number 5 to Democrats and Republicans that Ronald prepared to them, to media.
The interesting thing here is decommissioning and waste recycling. Whenever somebody in the United States builds a coal-fired power plant or refinery, whatever, you got to answer all the questions of, how you're going to basically bring that site back to its existing condition when you first started, to reclaim it and recycle all the materials and everything. But that question's never asked when you're going for wind turbines, solar panels, because, when the wind turbines, fall apart and the solar panels have to be replaced or destroyed because of, hurricanes and et cetera, it's just thrown into a toxic waste dump. There's no conversation. It's a double standard. If it's fossil fuel related, which is, coal and everything else, everybody wants to know to the nth detail how you're going to recycle and reclaim this site back to its, pristine condition. But the double standard is if the solar panels and wind turbines fall apart, they go into a toxic waste dump. And the mining where you're doing this stuff, which is in, China and Africa and parts of Brazil, there's no question about how to reclaim the site back to its original pristine condition. So you have, like I say, it's a double standard that doesn't apply to wind and solar.
Let me see. Your concern is more related to the destination of waste and parts that are not useful anymore. So, is this point?
Well, like I said, when the wind turbines, fall apart, take Australia. They've got huge dumpsters, piles of toxic waste of spent turbine blades, because there's no proven way to cost effectively recycle it. And solar panels, wind turbines are going to be reaching the end of their quote lifespan, and so you're going to be seeing more and more wind turbines joining the junk pile, and more and more solar panels joining the junk pile. And without recycling it, you can't keep sucking this stuff out of the earth to build these wind turbines, solar panels. You got to recycle this stuff, and there's no conversation. They just want to build a wind turbine, and there's the double standard is there's no conversation about how to recycle them.
In this case, Democrats a little bit, let's see, I don't know how can I say, it's different from Republican. Republicans more, in this case, aggressive, no, with waste and...
Well, I think probably the Republicans question the effectiveness of all this effort to occasional electricity from wind and solar. Whereas I think the Democrats, they're all in. They believe that wind and solar is going to replace fossil
Will
fuels.
solve the world. Yeah.
Unbeknownst to them, that all the pieces and parts to make wind and solar are made from the oil derivatives manufactured from oil. So if they're effective at getting rid of oil, there'll be no parts to build wind turbines. There'll be no parts to build solar panels. And so you get rid of oil, you get rid of electricity, because remember, electricity came after the discovery of oil. The light bulb was made with oil.
Mm.
And so, like I say, all the parts and components, not just the wind turbines, solar panels, but, natural gas, coal power plants, hydropower, nuclear power plants, all the parts, the computers, the insulation, the wire, everything behind the doors is all made from oil derivatives. So you get rid of oil, you get rid of electricity. And as we mentioned before, you get rid of all vehicles because, the Tesla's 100% made with oil. The tires, the insulation, the upholstery, everything. It's basically a fossil fuel car that happens to have a battery inside of it.
Mm.
And the battery inside of it, in fact, was made with fossil fuels because all the mining, to mine for all that material, that mining equipment was made with fossil fuels, powered by fossil fuels. And like I say, it's just it's just an interesting situation where people just don't want to talk about it because you get rid of oil, we're back to the 1800s.
Mm. And Ronald, one of the biggest concerns in this case is the size of batteries and the quantity of batteries that we are manufacturing for cars and everything. So
yes.
this volume in the future will be something impressive.
Exactly. And, there's only a few places on Earth that have the lithium and cobalt. And that's pretty dirty mining. If we had a lot of lithium and cobalt in the United States, I don't think we would mine for it here. The environmentalists would be the first one to say, hey, you can't destroy our land here. It's okay to destroy land. We can destroy land
my
over
backyard.
That's right, not in my backyard. And so it's just it's a double standard.
Yeah. And it's a very, very important point, no doubt. Let's see the other questions. How you see Democrats and Republicans thinking about big oil impacting climate change? Do you believe that big oil are responsible for climate change or not?
It's our materialistic needs, I think, are the primary reason for jumping on big oil, because we have a need for smaller and faster electronics, bigger and faster planes and ships, launches into outer space. That's the only reason that crude oil even exists. And the question is, how will electricity generated from wind and solar be able to support the materialistic demands of humanity? Or, before we chastise big oil for impacting climate change, shouldn't we ask ourselves, how dare we continuously demand the products and fuels made from oil that makes our lives more comfortable? The easy solution is, you want to get rid of big oil? Stop using the products. There's no way that you can use black cruddy tar, and if you stop using the products, there's no need for oil. Because, like I say, oil is useless unless you can refine it into something usable, and something usable is the fuels and the oil derivatives that makes all the products. Well, if you're not using the products, there'll be no need for the oil derivatives. If you stop flying in airplanes and stop taking your cruises, there'll be no need for fuels. Get back to the horse and buggy. So yeah, it's interesting because that's right now, that's our only source to support the materialistic needs of society. And again, we're talking about the materialistic needs of a small number of people on this earth. because the 80% that are making $10 an hour, $10 a day or less, they're in other countries. It's only the wealthy countries that have these policies. And to, like I say, you're biting the hand that feeds you. Unless you have a backup plan, don't chastise big oil because, you can put them out of business. Well, what's that going to do for you? You're going to wind up with shortages of products that you want. And that's going to increase the price, supply demand. If there's demand keeps increasing and you effectively shorten the supply, well, prices are going up.
And for these questions of big oil and impacting climate change, I suppose that Democrats and Republicans, they have totally different answers, no?
Well, I know the Republicans probably support the need to keep the supply chain of products moving. The Democrats, I don't think they understand that wind and solar cannot make anything. Because wind and solar is not wind and solar, it's not wind and solar energy, it's wind and solar electricity. Because that's the only thing wind and solar can make or generate is electricity. And like I say, it's a total different world. And so we really have to get these folks to, support, how are you going to support the supply chain of products? Renewables can't do it.
Very good point. Let's go to the last. Green energy embargo by China. The OPEC of minerals. This is your concern about national security, Ronald.
Well, yes. We have, following the OPEC oil embargo 50 years ago, back in 1973, the Department of Energy was formed, and their sole purpose was don't let this happen again. Well, we've kind of migrated from oil and, California, it's interesting because back in 73, California was 5% dependent on foreign oil. There was a lot of oil production in California and in Alaska. And between the two, it met 95% of the demands of the fourth largest economy in the world. Well, the Department of Energy has allowed that 5% to grow to more than 60%. And so now California, we have we're a big state. We got 9 international airports, 41 military airports, 3 of the largest shipping ports in the country where the material comes in, products, for the rest of the country. That's all being run by foreign oil. What is the DOE doing? You got to question that. And then during this time, now we're transitioning away from fossil fuels and we're going to green energy. Well, to go to green energy, EVs and wind and solar just for electricity, all the electricity is controlled by China. They control the lithium, they control the cobalt. And if they basically decide to, stop shipping EVs and, all the materials, like I say, we would have a green embargo. They control our green movement. Without China, there is no green movement because we're totally dependent on them. And so, how do you avoid, an embargo by China that may impact our national security? We had the situation before that we wanted to become independent of OPEC. And now we're dependent on a lot of other foreign countries, not as much just on OPEC, on a lot of other countries. So we've dispersed our risk, around the world. But to go green, there's only one country that controls that. That's China.
And which party do you believe that can have a better relationship with China, avoiding these conflicts and something worse?
Well, today I would probably say the Republicans recognize it more, but it all depends on who the leader is. If, right now we have, Joe Biden and Trump, the presumptive candidates. And if Biden gets reelected, I don't see anything changing. If it was a different Democrat in that position, maybe they had more marbles in their head. I don't know. be able to have a conversation. But no, I don't see anything changing if the Democrats get reelected with Biden getting reelected. If Trump comes in, I think you'll see a big change, and I think a lot of these questions will be discussed in public. I
And has
encourage
like
students, families, friends, talk about this because these are valid
dinner table?
questions, and the economy, our lifestyle depends on it, and it's not only our lifestyle in the wealthy countries, it's the other 7 billion people in developing countries that are not part of this conversation. We're trying to make our life green, forget about them. Not in my backyard. It's okay to destroy their land
Yeah.
and, take advantage of their people, but, can't do it here. So, yeah, talk about it. And like I say, it's a conversation. There's no easy answers. But the concern I have is, we're coming up with solutions that are quote, good for the people that live here in America.
Mhm.
Well, Armando, there's only 300 million people living in America. There's 8 billion in the world. And
Yeah.
so what's good for the 300 million is not necessarily good for the other, 8 billion people. So
Yeah.
that's like I said, we do have a worldly population, and we have to take them into consideration in these discussions.
And what are you planning to do to reach the candidates with these 7 questions? Going to media and talking to friends or advisors? What's your plan?
All of the above. I'm going to try and, like the conversation we're having today, be involved in more and more interviews. I know this article that I published was broadcast around the world, and so hopefully more and more people will be talking about this before the presidential election. I'm kind of gun shy about the media when they get a chance to interview the candidates, the questions. I'm not sure if the media is going to prepare the questions or if the candidates are going to prepare the questions for the media to ask. And if they do, it's really not a conversation.
Yeah. Ronald, is there an independent candidate running for this election too, or no? It's not, or only Republicans
Not
and
that I
Democrats?
know of. I know the governor of California, Newsom. He would love to be the presidential candidate, but he's a clone to Joe Biden. So, so yeah,
The same
he's
thoughts, the same way.
well, Armando. I jokingly I respond by saying that Joe Biden and California Governor Newsom are doing fantastic jobs. And I pause for 2 seconds of killing the economy. I mean, they couldn't do a better job.
Oh my God.
So,
Oh my God. And
so
my
anyhow,
last
that
point for you,
yeah,
Ronald.
yes,
So no, sorry. Go ahead, please.
okay, go ahead.
So my last point for you, Ronald, is: are you really decided not to run for this presidency?
That's right. I'm not running. That is, Armando, that has got to be the
Independent, Ronald.
well. It's interesting. I also joke with people that I would love to have the exclusive concession to Kool-Aid because they're all drinking the same Kool-Aid. And the really the discouraging thing is that yes, we're being led down, I think, a path that's really helping destroy the economy. But the public is not participating in the conversations, and I think they're believing what's coming out of these policies. Let's get rid of the big oil. And like I say, you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you. I mean, that's your product supply chain. And if you get rid of big oil, you're going back to the 1800th century.
Yeah.
And that's something that people just don't recognize.
And Ronald, in the media is they are in one side or another side, or both sides, or they are not saying these things? What's running with the media?
I am in shock that the media doesn't raise the questions that I've raised. And I'm also in shock that, for example, we got, generals report to Joe Biden, Army, Navy, Marine, Air Force, in the space program. Nobody's asking the question, how are we going to support our planes and ships and trucks and, without fuel? And how are we going to provide our products to the troops without those oil derivatives?
But the point is, they are not asking because they don't know about this issue, or because it's a bad direction that they.
I'm not sure, Armando. Logic says you got to ask the question. The idea of, jumping off an airplane without a parachute, it's a great idea, but, is there a backup plan? And I'm just amazed that there's just a lack of conversation. That's the thing that I've been trying to promote with all my op-ed articles and the books I've written is let's have a conversation because, we're so focused. I joke that in California, Governor Newsom, I think he only breathes California air. Anything outside the borders of California, he doesn't breathe that air. And so it's okay to have emissions, uncontrolled emissions, in developing countries because he doesn't breathe that air.
Very good.
So there's got to be discussions because, like I say, you got to bring it down to logic and reasoning. And like I say, there is no silver bullet answer. I mean, we're not going to save everybody. Some of the 8 billion people are going to basically, die from weather-related incidents or climate change. But at the direction we're going of getting rid of the product supply chain that's supporting the materialistic world we live in, that could impact billions of people from starvation and diseases, weather-related fatalities. Like I say, it's be like living in the 1800s. I don't want to go there.
This was Ronald Stein, energy consultant. Thank you so much. Another
Armando,
very, very good.
Thank you, Armando. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay.
Great day for you, Ronald, and for everyone.